I, 23F, was cheated on a few years ago by my ex-boyfriend, 25M. For the sake of annuity, I'll be changing names and defining features of this person and specific situations. Well, I don't really know where to begin with this story, but I'm not sure if I'm paranoid, or if I should actually be concerned. I've pondered on this for a few days now, and although I felt completely different at first, I'm starting to wonder if I'm going crazy, or if I should actually be aware of something I'm not seeing. For starters, the relationship wasn't by any means healthy. My ex, Matt, fake name, is a pathological liar. Cannot go a day without saying a lie, so truthfully, I don't even know the validity of these next statements from him, but I guess that's the beauty of shitty exes, right? He, supposedly, got diagnosed by a therapist with ASPD early on in our relationship. It's also important to add that Matt had a less than favorable childhood/upbringing, filled with trauma, but still, shit is still shit. He also claims that he's a pro at a certain thrill sport like legitimately professional. Sponsored, raced, and competed under big-name competitors, although I never saw any evidence of this, we'll just say it's true for the sake of this post. He really makes it seem like he travels all over and is some sort of minor league hotshot or something. He also claimed to have connections to obtain information on pretty much anyone through a close family friend, and he literally told me facts about one of my exes before him that I had no clue about, legal facts that aren't disclosed to the public/not accessible to the public. Alright, so now that we got the important information to keep in mind out of the way, we'll get into the breakup, the communication after, and finally, where I am currently, and why I need some advice or someone to tell me I'm just being paranoid and to shut up. So, our breakup. It was nasty. I don't really know how else to put it. I have to leave out certain details to keep it anonymous, but blatantly put, I caught him, while I was at work, on a dating app. He tried to convince me it was an email app, but I'm not fucking stupid. It's also important to note that he was piss-hammered when this was all transpiring. As I said, I was at work, in the middle of a shift, and your girl isn't gonna let some little boy make her lose out on her money, so I notified some of my coworkers to not let him drive, and that I called him a ride and it'll be here soon. He, of course, is trying to save his ass, saying he didn't cheat on me, the whole deal, making a huge scene in front of everyone, but little did he know, I didn't say a single thing to any of my coworkers until the next day, so he outed himself to everyone in that place that night. That night, while passed out, after returning home from work, I went through his phone. Now, I swear on everything, that I never had any desire/need to look through a significant other's phone, and hadn't gone through someone's phone, until this night. He was one of those no social media guys where his presence was non-existent or very minimal. He claimed he had deleted Snapchat nearly 6 months before this confrontation, but what is the first thing I see open when I open his phone? Before opening that can of worms, I went to his text messages. I wanted to know that he deleted messages, but I needed proof. So I texted a recent number in his phone that he had messaged a few hours before, said the phone reset and lost all the contacts, and to just resend their name. This worked in my favor as the girl, we'll call her Melissa, thought that text was weird and asked if everything was okay. So I then called the girl, who then proceeded to tell me she had no clue I ever existed. She lives in his hometown, on the East Coast, and he was texting her all night and has been texting her the last few weeks about how much he hates his life, he's unhappy, all that typical shit. I begin to explain what happened, and again, she mentions he never said anything about having a girlfriend. We had been together for almost a year at this point. Finally, I worked up the courage to open Snapchat, and that's where I saw everything. The videos, the pictures, the conversations, everything. I could only stomach looking through 8 to 10 of the girls, but there were upwards of 15 different women who he had been cheating on me with. I had lost a baby with this guy. I can't even begin to tell you the pit I felt in my stomach. This relationship was so intense, and it all came crashing down even more intense than I could have ever imagined. I can't really tell you what I did after that, it's all a blur, to be honest. Don't forget to support my channel by subscribing, thank you. I just remember bolting into the room, screaming, crying, wondering how someone who I spent nearly 24/7 with, housed, lent money to, supported, loved, took care of, and admired, could do this to me. I couldn't stop screaming and nearly swung on him until I was pulled back by someone, again, leaving certain details out. I don't know how I managed to stay in the same house as him that night, but I just locked the door in my room, and he was gone by 6 a.m. After a few months, I started adjusting to my new life without him. I had gotten a new job, started making new friends, and eventually met someone else. That someone else is now my husband. He really doesn't pertain to this story, so I will be leaving details surrounding him out. My ex, of course, was trying to work things out with me, and for a while there, I was entertaining the idea. I was weak and wanted attention/companionship, but I realized that nothing good would come of that situation, so I blocked him on everything. But still, somehow, my ex found out when my husband, BF at the time, and I started dating, so he sent me an email, yes, an email, stating he knew I started dating someone else and how hurt he is, and how he couldn't believe that it was actually over. That would be the last time I would hear from him until earlier this year. I was at work one night and I got a message from him on Messenger. He wanted to see how I was doing and saw that I had moved to a new city, had a new job, etc. Now, it's important to note, I really wasn't active on social media for too much of 2021, and even some of my closest friends had no clue what I was up to. I didn't really feed into the message at all and stated that I moved here with my husband and that I'm doing well. Pretty much all that conversation ensued. Now, here we are, the present day. Earlier this week, I was going through some personal items from between 3 to 5 years ago, and I found a personal item that has some sort of value/memory associated with it, so I went through a list of people and contacted them asking if they had lost it. Everyone I contacted said no, and then I remembered there was one more person it could belong to my ex. So, unwillingly, I texted him asking if it was important and if he wanted it back. He goes on to say that it probably is his, but I can get rid of it because he's moving from his county to my county. Again, important to note, he is not from here. He moved to the neighboring county to me a few years ago. He had never been to my county or had any interest to be in my county. But he says he's moving to a town right next to where I used to live, where my parents still live about 10 minutes away, due to a career change that is causing him to move up here, and he is moving in and bought a place with his partner, if that means work partner or not, medical field. However, the career location is all over counties in the south of our state and is technically closer to the county that he is in right now. At first, I didn't really think much of it. I just disregarded it and let it go. But, later, I was on FaceTime with my mom, and I decided to tell her what happened. She knows everything that's happened, obviously, and my mom mentioned to me to be on alert and just keep an eye out. My ex is known for doing really impulsive shit and would totally be that person to show up at your go-to-hangout spots just to rattle you and piss you off or even make a scene. He threatened, and actually went to his car, to go pull a weapon on an ex of mine, just because he said hi to me at a bar. Thankfully, I'm a boss bitch and handled that situation because mama doesn't play stupid games LMAO. Anyway, my mom told me to be aware and on alert because she checked the registry for his career, and he is nowhere to be found on that list. Like he doesn't exist in the system, no registration of a license number. So, again, this is probably just another thing he's lying about. Also, side note, I've had this one particular stalker account on Instagram, consistently viewing my stories and posts every time I do post one, who has been seeing my stuff since about the time we split up. I can't remember the exact dates and stuff, but it was around the time we broke up that this account started showing up. I can't figure out who it is. About a year and a half ago, I entered a relationship that I think went too far too fast. We had both had difficult backgrounds, and were overall pretty lonely at the time, so we really rushed some things. I realize now that there's pretty much no circumstances where saying "I love you" after 2 days is healthy, lol. The fact that we'd both had hard pasts was a big factor in our relationship. At the time, I admit I had processed less of my own trauma, so we both believed that he had had a harder time. He vented to me quite often, while I can't recall ever doing so to him. After we'd been together for a bit, I met some of his friends, who were wonderful people and very happy to see how much of a positive effect I was having on him. In fact, he started seeing a therapist as well. Basically, he was in such a bad place that he didn't think seeing one would help before we got together, but once I was around, he basically thought, wow, if someone my own age who's not specifically trained to help others is improving my mental health this much, imagine what a real professional could do. I was insanely proud of him. We broke up on civil terms, I guess. His therapist was really helping him break down all the different problems he had, and he was realizing he had too much on his plate and didn't know what to do about it. But at some point, he decided it just wasn't possible to juggle everything, and said that although he loved me and wanted the best for me, he couldn't balance a girlfriend with everything else, like his physical ailments, big crazy family he still lived with, struggling to get a job, etc. Honestly, even though I was totally broken and stunned at how out of nowhere it seemed, it made sense to me, and I thought it was really brave of him to choose to let go. We still spoke occasionally via social media for about a month, basically just checking in to make sure everything was okay. Although he was open to being friends at some point in the future, he asked me to not get too close or give him any advice because otherwise he'd be back to square one, and I was fine with that. Then I made a big fat mistake, and I completely own up to it. He said one day that he was having an especially hard time. Don't forget to support my channel by subscribing, thank you. Without thinking that it wasn't what he wanted to hear, or bothering to hide that it made me really frustrated and upset, I asked him point blank why he would say such a thing to me of all people, and what the fuck I was supposed to do. I understand now that a person can say, I'm not well to whoever they want, and that they don't always do so with the intention of getting help from the other person, but I was still really missing him and hated to see him this way. He got really mad, and nowadays I know he was completely reasonable to do so. He said I did not get to talk to someone that way when they were literally sad that they were alive, and did not want me in his life if I was going to have that kind of reaction to him saying he was having an awful time. Then he blocked me on the platform we were talking on. A couple days later, I sent him an apology on another platform, saying that even if we never spoke again, I was sorry for responding that way, and hoped everything would work out in the end. But he was still really upset with me, and said he didn't want me ever contacting him, and accused me of some really horrible stuff, like taking advantage of him since he was super sick mentally and physically. I guess my earlier callous response was so bad for him that it really screwed up how he thought of me as a person, and the taking advantage of him since he was in really bad shape part is probably something he claimed because we both thought I was a lot healthier and better off. In fact, I think that was kind of accumulation of him being jealous of me for a long time. Since then, I've been dealing with my own issues, both past trauma and stuff related to him, like the pain of having such a passionate relationship end so abruptly, my guilt from saying that careless thing to him, and him getting so angry there at the end. It's been a lot of hard work and pain, but I have a better idea of my own health and general issues than I did while I was with him. Now, here's why all this might affect my future. Ever since I was little, I loved reading and writing, and wanted to be an author. In elementary school, I kept having books taken away by teachers because I was trying to read them in class. I started thinking about seriously being an author in early high school, and started reading things I normally wouldn't, to learn technique and how to set up a story. Then, in the past year, as I was realizing more things about myself and working on my mental health, I decided it would be a great idea to write stuff specifically for younger audiences having a hard time. I've seen it said that you should write what you want to read, and while I don't think that applies to everyone, I do think it would be good for me to write what my younger self needed to hear. I've gotten good feedback on stuff I've written, including from my target age group. A lot of it has been shorter stories I've posted online, but I've recently finished a YA novel after about 8 months and 3 drafts. After the usual 90 million rejection letters, I've come into contact with not one but 2 publishers that would be interested, and by calling in a ton of favors and talking through a friend of a friend of a friend, I've even had coffee with a very successful writer who lives in the same city as me who would be happy to recommend my book and give me advice on basically anything. The thing is, I don't think I can go forward without trying to build a bridge with my ex. If everything goes well and people want more from me, it's going to put me in the spotlight, and I can't do that if there's still someone out there who thinks these things about me. The way I see it, if I don't talk to him now, it's just setting me up for him to come out and say, oh, this author who writes about characters with mental health struggles is just a hypocrite. She didn't treat my issues with respect or dignity even after we'd had a close relationship. And who knows where he stands on the whole, taking advantage of him while he was in awful shape thing. Because if he genuinely believes that, that's going to knock me down 1,000 times harder. I can't believe I'm in a place where my book flopping and my work never amounting to anything is one of the safer options. I have to talk to him now. If he's still upset, I at least have the luxury of changing gears to do something else with my life, so I won't be in the spotlight. If he's willing to make peace, then I can go forward with publishing. But I can't afford to wait until after my name is in bookstores to find out what he thinks. I don't want to work with a pseudonym, I don't want to stick to online work, and I don't want to be a ghostwriter for someone else. I want to keep making work about real issues for kids who need the comfort, and if I do well, I want to use my reach to do more good work. I want to work with organizations that help kids. I can't hide behind my computer for the rest of my life, because of how much it'll limit my ability to do all that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting articles ahead.